The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
This week on Politics Now, Nevada's role at next week's Democratic National Convention, how organizers are preparing to deal with protesters. Plus,
can't take anything for granted, but the numbers have shifted and the poll numbers have now moved in our favor.
Nevada Congresswoman Dina Titus talks to us about her re-election bid, next week's convention, and wild horses. Also, a politician on trial for murder. We'll look back at the first week of proceedings in the case against former public administrator Rob Tellus.
You're watching Politics Now with John Langler on 8 News Now.
Thank you for joining us. The Democratic National Convention kicks off next week in Chicago. Headlining the event, Vice President and presumptive presidential nominee for the Democrats, Kamala Harris, as well as her running mate Tim Walz. A lot of the schedule still hasn't been released yet. We do know President Joe Biden speaks on opening night. Other speakers include former Presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. We don't know which Nevadans, if any, are speaking next week besides Congressman Stephen Horsford. We'll talk about that in a second. Democratic Senator from Nevada, Jackie Rosen, she's not attending. She'll be campaigning in northern Nevada next week. This year's DNC will also have protesters against Israel's war with Hamas on the outside. News Nation's Alex Carapello lays out their plans.
For the past week, News Nation has been granted behind-the-scene access with the coalition to march on the DNC. We're at their headquarters right now. Let's take you inside. They're estimating somewhere between 10 to 30,000 protesters will come here to make their causes known, to activate outside the Democratic National Convention. Take a look right here. You could see hundreds of picket signs already ready to go. And then inside the actual headquarters itself, volunteers working hard, getting their signs, their posters, their picket signs ready, using stencils to make sure that their words are clear for everyone outside the DNC to hear. The coalition to march on the DNC is made up of more than 200 organizations with varying causes, from reproductive rights to combating police brutality to environmental change seekers. In fact, groups from 21 different states have joined this rallying cry.
We support the First Amendment right to free speech, but we don't support intimidation. We don't support harassment. And quite frankly, I'm a little over people who are throwing temper tantrums and threatening to escalate because they don't get their way.
We are working in good faith, that we're working to keep everyone safe, and we're working to protect everyone's rights. As long as the city accepts and meets us by ensuring that everyone's rights are protected, I'm confident that we'll have success.
That report there from Chicago. Right now, the protesters are supposed to stay on a 1-mile route. Now, that could be expanded at a federal hearing taking place in Chicago on Tuesday. Democratic Congresswoman Dina Titus says she's excited for the DNC. Her race right now is a rematch against Republican former Colonel Mark Robertson, retired Colonel Mark Robertson. This week, I spoke with the Congresswoman about the race and the DNC. Let's get started first with a couple of legislative items. The no taxes on tips proposal was first presented by former President Trump when he was here back in June. Democrats are now supporting it. We just saw Vice President Harris reference it when she was here over the weekend. You have sort of, it seems like, said you support it, but with some reservations. Walk me through your feeling on this idea.
Well, I do support it, but I think it's fairer if you put some other provisions with it, and I'm working on legislation to do that. You got to raise the minimum wage because there are a lot of service people who don't get tips. I mean, how many people really leave a tip in the hotel room for the maid? You know, I do, but a lot of people don't. Or somebody who works at a fast food place, they're not going to get tips, and they're making minimum wage. So you raise that. Also, you know, when you're talking about the tips, how much, this doesn't happen in Nevada, but some states you can raise the minimum wage only a certain amount, and tips are supposed to make up the difference. Let's take away that differential so everybody makes the same amount.
The wild horse roundups up in northern Nevada. Another one just finished with BLM. There were deaths, as has happened before. We saw some more video from up there. You've asked BLM to stop this, obviously. It hasn't really gone anywhere. What would you do if you're reelected to try and address this on a federal level?
Well, I'll keep fighting this with BLM. Now, they are very hidebound and they don't like to change, and so it is a struggle. But there's been more and more attention to it outside of Nevada. It's become an international issue. We got a call from somebody in Italy saying, save the wild horses. You have to manage the wild horses just like you have to manage cows that are out there on public lands. This is an environmental issue, but you can do it in a much more humane way. You don't have to chase horses down with helicopters where they fall, they break their neck, then they're rounded up, then they're put in these awful pens where respiratory diseases just travel rampantly. So you can still manage them and do it more humanely, like with birth control.
You're running once again against Mark Robertson. One of the things that your campaign has referenced was you suggest that Mr. Robertson wants to cut Social Security and Medicare, something that he denies, but it's still a big issue one way or the other. If you're reelected, how would you like to tackle the idea of Social Security, Medicare, and funding down the line?
Well, Robertson can deny it all he wants to, but he wants to have a commission. A commission is just another word for let's meet behind closed doors and figure out how to cut it. Has supported cuts to Medicare, wants to raise the age to 69, supports a balanced budget, which how are you going to balance it, but cut entitlements. They've said that. That means cutting Social Security. So I don't support any of those things. I think you want to make it solvent. You've gone a long way for solving Medicare and Social Security with the lowering the price of drugs, allowing to negotiate like the VA does. That will be helpful. You can look at raising that cap so that high-end earners pay more into the system, and that'll make it more solvent too.
The DNC is next week in Chicago, and a lot has happened on the Democratic side, especially on the presidential race in the last, month, maybe 2 months. It seems it's been a wild month. I'm wondering, just from your end, as someone who's in Congress, what has it been like for you to watch sort of from the sidelines everything that's been going on at the head of the Democratic ticket?
Well, after the debate, there was a lot of uncertainty. Would the president not run again? Some people called for that. Some people supported him. You just want to know what's going to happen. You want to have somebody solid at the top of the ticket. And so when he decided not to run again, that just opened the gates. And now there's a lot of enthusiasm. Kamala Harris came out strong. She picked a very strong, popular running mate in Governor Walz. I served with him on the Veterans Committee in the House. People are enthusiastic. You can just feel it in the streets. So I think the convention's going to be a good time, and they're going to hit the road. You know, Nevada's always a swing state. You can't take anything for granted, but the numbers have shifted, and the poll numbers have now moved in our favor.
Yeah, we do have a lot more of that interview with Congresswoman Titus at 8newsnow.com. We continue to talk about the DNC and the Democratic presidential ticket, abortion, helping test site workers with cancer get funding, and also funding for wars overseas. We also have interviews with her opponent in the race, Mark Robertson, on 8newsnow.com. Now, on the Republican side, former President Donald Trump was also busy this week. He did a live interview with ex-owner Elon Musk of what we used to call Twitter. Mr. Trump was also on the campaign trail. He was in New Jersey and North Carolina. And there, he railed against Vice President Harris for supporting his no taxes on tips proposal.
No tax on tips. All of a sudden, out of the blue, she comes out. That was months ago I said that. And she came out and she said, no tax on tips. She could have at least said, you know, President Trump had some great ideas, but one of the ideas was no tax on tips. I think it would have been nice, and people would have accepted that. But she just came out like it was hers, and she never had her. In fact, just the opposite. The IRS is all set up to really go after people that make tips.
This week, the Trump campaign said it had also been hacked by Iranian hackers. The FBI says it's investigating efforts to try and get into both major campaigns online. Green Party candidate Jill Stein will likely be the fourth person on Nevada's presidential ballot. This week, the Green Party won a court case challenging for that ballot access. Now, party leaders have to submit Ms. Stein's name with a vice presidential candidate by the end of the month. She hasn't picked a running mate yet, but Stein says she plans to do so on Friday. A new Cook Political Report survey shows Vice President Harris leads now in 6 battleground states. However, the same survey says that she's trailing here in Nevada. Former President Trump, according to this survey, has a 5-point lead here. That's closer than it was in May. In all other states, Harris has a 2 to 5 point lead, but the margin of error in this survey is 4.9%. The Trump and Harris campaigns have finally agreed on debates for themselves and the vice presidential candidates. Hannah Brandt has those details.
There's no more debating it. Soon, Americans will get to see the leaders on the Republican and Democratic presidential tickets face off.
Kamala will be exposed during the debate. She will be exposed during the debate or debates.
The Trump campaign and the Harris campaign say they're planning 3 debates, 2 between the presidential candidates and 1 between the candidates for vice president. That VP debate was officially confirmed Thursday morning when Senator J.D. Vance accepted a CBS News invitation to debate Governor Tim Walz on October 1st.
I think I would have to go before the American people and make the case for why I deserve to have that job.
The first presidential debate will happen before that, on September 10th on ABC News. And Team Trump is pushing for more.
I think we ought to do as many debates as we possibly can. I know the President Trump has invited Kamala Harris to do 3 debates. She's only agreed to 1.
In a statement, the Harris campaign signaled she'll do 2, saying, quote, assuming Donald Trump actually shows up on September 10 to debate Vice President Harris, then Governor Walz will see J.D. Vance on October 1. And the American people will have another opportunity to see the Vice President and Donald Trump on the debate stage in October. Until then, the candidates are hitting swing states.
North Carolina, thank you.
And battling for voters out on the campaign trail.
I love you back.
The details of a potential October presidential debate are still up in the air. In Washington, I'm Hannah Brandt.
Hannah Brandt, as I mentioned, reporting there. 8 News Now, by the way, is doing a series of debates of our own here in October. We're going to host programs featuring Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen and Republican challenger Sam Brown. We're also going to broadcast a Las Vegas mayoral debate between Shelley Berkeley and Victoria Seaman. Next year on Politics Now, saving our most precious resource, the future of Lake Mead and the Colorado River from this week's Water Summit here in Las Vegas. Plus, we look at the first week in the murder trial of former politician Robert Tellus.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
We know which ballot questions will be on the November ballot, so let's start with some of the high-profile ones that you'll see. Question 3 creates open primaries and ranked choice voting. This is its second go-round. That means if it passes, it becomes state law. Question 6 deals with abortion rights, puts them into the state constitution. It would allow the procedure until about 6 months. That's the current law. This is its first time, which means it would need to pass again in 2026. Question 7, that requires you to provide identification in order to vote. And again, this would also have to pass again in 2026 if it's approved in November. Some other ballot questions. Question 1 takes the state higher education Board of Regents out of the state constitution, and that would allow the legislature to make changes to that board. Also on the ballot, you can see that there's a ballot that would prevent taxes on diapers. That's question 5. Another changes some language in the Constitution to officially ban slavery and involuntary servitude. And another removes the words insane and deaf and dumb from the state constitution. Meanwhile, the nation's leading water officials were in Las Vegas this week. They discussed the future of the Colorado River and Lake Mead. The Bureau of Reclamation controls the river, of course, and it touted agreements among the western states to use about 20% less water from the river over the next 3 years. Lake Mead is 20 feet higher than it was 2 years ago. That's still not enough to get us out of a federal shortage declaration.
So where we're going to be most likely is in a tier reduction. But the good news is it's not where we were 2 years ago, and the lake is in a better place. So we're continuing to work with our partners to see what we can do more, but we're in the right trajectory as far as moving forward.
The next big step is a new Colorado River Compact. That divides how much water the 7 states on the river can use. The current one expires in 2027. A draft agreement is expected by the end of the year. This week, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg was here in Las Vegas. He attended the groundbreaking for a big road project on Maryland Parkway, which is, of course, one of the valley's busiest arterials. Every day, about 35,000 vehicles and 9,000 bus riders travel along Maryland Parkway. A $330 million project you're looking at here will revamp 12 miles of that road from Reed Airport north towards downtown Las Vegas. It'll bring dedicated bus lanes, new bus stops, and improved pedestrian crossings. Another $150 million federal grant will put in 15 new hydrogen-powered buses on that route.
We got to invest in affordable, comfortable, convenient ways for people to get short distances within their own cities.
The voice there of Secretary Buttigieg. Construction should finish in 2026. RTC believes the project will cut travel times by 20%. This week, the murder trial against former Clark County Public Administrator Rob Tellus got underway. He is accused of killing a Review Journal reporter. Prosecutors say Tellus killed Jeff Gehrman back in 2022. Gehrman had written several stories in the RJ about problems in the administrator's office. This week, prosecutors called about 20 witnesses, many police officers from Metro who investigated the case. Prosecutors say Tellus's DNA was found in Gehrman's fingernails. On the other hand, defense attorney Robert Draskevich suggests police are disorganized and unprepared.
This is a notification from the DA civil employees about that request on September the 1st of 2022 at 5:45 p.m. So that's about 15 hours before the murder occurs. He gets a notification about Mr. Gehrman's request.
And we all know killing a journalist does not kill a story. Killing Jeff Gehrman does not kill the investigation or the stories concerning Mr. Tellus. And tell you what
Robert Draskevich, the defense attorney there. Tellus previously told 8 News Now investigator Vanessa Murphy in a jailhouse interview he says he's framed. Tellus is expected to put on that defense next week, and he could take the stand. Stuck between LA and Las Vegas. Next on Politics Now, we'll look at efforts to expand I-15 to Southern California and whether any progress is being made. And one step closer to a new baseball stadium. New agreements on the way between the A's and local officials for a brand new ballpark.
You're watching Politics Now.
This week, the A's and Las Vegas stadium officials inched closer to a lease agreement for a new ballpark. The draft would cover 30 years. Eventually, the A's are expected to move to Las Vegas from Oakland and play in a $1.5 billion stadium built at the site of the old Tropicana. A portion of that money comes from state tax incentives. Stadium Authority head Steve Hill says the final versions of the contract should be ready by October.
Is rounding third and headed for home, and we're pretty happy about that. So that's great. Thank you.
This is one of 4 separate agreements that need to be approved by the Stadium Authority Board before public money is actually made available for the project. It's an economic lifeline to Las Vegas, but on busy weekends, I-15 in and out of Southern California really turns into a parking lot. Widening I-15, it's still controversial. Nevada's done its part, but in California, it's still kind of the same. 8 News Now reporter Ryan Matthew explores what is and isn't being paved.
Hurry up and wait. The lifeline between Las Vegas and Los Angeles is known to stop beating. Most recently, when a big rig on fire spilled toxic chemicals across it and halted traffic for nearly 2 days.
Where it goes from 2 lanes to 1, everybody slammed on their brakes. It came to like a complete stop.
These 113 miles are the problem. Much of it 2 lanes in both directions. That's known to bottleneck from 11 million travelers on it annually.
California says it's done its part. 5 miles of the shoulder leaving Nevada were recently converted into a third travel lane. The signs along it show you can only use it 2 days out of the week. It's the remaining miles, still only at 2 lanes, that are expected to stay this way and continue causing those problems for the foreseeable future.
And they opened up 5 miles. Well, that doesn't do anything.
Las Vegas Mayor Carolyn Goodman has efforted change.
This is the beginning. This isn't the end solution.
Since even before California and Nevada announced the shoulder conversion 3 years ago. In a statement, Caltrans tells 8 News Now, quote, "These improvements are saving an average of 30 to 40 minutes on these days for travelers heading back to Southern California from Las Vegas, and that Caltrans has no additional plans to expand I-15 near the state line."
Not acceptable.
Mayor Goodman believes the lack pumps the brakes on emergency response.
What do you do in 110-degree heat? Where are you getting water? Where are you getting food? There's no place to move. There's no place for help.
A joint solution still at a halt. Ryan Matthew, 8 News Now.
Of course, there is that planned high-speed rail line from Rancho Cucamonga to Las Vegas. It's supposed to alleviate some of the stress, but it won't be operational until 2028. Mayor Goodman believes the $3 billion President Biden awarded to that rail project should have gone to the freeway instead. This week, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority approved spending $1.7 million on F1 tickets. That's about a quarter of the $7 million that it spent on F1 tickets last year. Those seats go to executives, staff, celebrities, and clients. The LVCVA also recently approved a $12 million advertising campaign with Formula One, and that is a 2-year contract. Next on Politics Now, verifying your vote, why you may get a request to update your voter signature.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
Watch your mailbox. Clark County is sending signature update forms to many voters, and that'll be matched to one that you use at the poll or on your mail-in ballot to compare the signatures. The county says it wants to ensure it has the most updated signatures on file. This is a voluntary request, though. If you're happy with the one you have, you don't have to update it. Of course, we are seeing how we're going to take a role in the Democratic National Convention coming up this upcoming week. Democrats have not released a full speaker list yet. Congressman Stephen Horsford, though, will speak as the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. We do know Nevada Senator Jackie Rosen is staying in Nevada. She'll be campaigning. She is not going to Chicago. That'll do it for us this week here on Politics Now. Stay up to date with all the political news on 8newsnow.com. And join us back here once again next Saturday night. Take care.